How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options trading program. And we're going to talk about something that's going to be relevant to right now, but it also will be relevant a year from now and it really be relevant 100 years from now. And this is going to be a really good video for options traders that are trying to understand how can they take their losses and turn them into wins. And even after suffering maybe a massive loss in the market, what do you have to do and what's the process to start working on taking that loss and turning that into a win? And what we're going to do is we're going to use Michael Jordan's career as a parable to kind of get you to understand what we're talking about. So the title of this particular video / audio is how do you win like Jordan as an options trader? How do you win after losing and suffering, continuous defeat or consistent defeat or massive defeat? How do you turn that into a win? And one of the reasons why we want to really use Michael Jordan is because this was a guy, and a lot of people don't know about this. He suffered a lot of really big losses before he kind of figured it out and learned how to win. And what the media has done is created a mythology around Michael Jordan that made it seem as if, he just came out and started winning, but it really didn't go like that. He came into a very, very competitive NBA. He came into a losing team. He was playing against a lot of really stacked teams, and he had to figure it out, right? He had to figure out what is it going to take for me to be successful in this particular environment, because his goal was always to be a champ, not just be a stats guy. And if you was around at that time, you kind of saw the progression and the process of a guy who was extremely talented, but had to learn how to win at the highest level in the NBA. And we're going to kind of use some of what he's doing, what he has went through, and try to create some type of analogies to options trading and what you may be going through. And what we've seen over the past 2 weeks is a lot of massive volatility in the market. And a lot of people have won really big on certain trades. A lot of people have lost really big on certain trades. And I want you to understand is that earlier in some of our earlier videos, we talked about how to protect your wins, and after winning really big, you can set yourself up for a big loss. However, we've had a lot of people that lost really big. They never experienced a win, and they're trying to figure out, am I ever going to get to win? Am I ever going to be successful? Am I ever going to be able to take options trading and turn this into the life that I desire? And you're in an environment where a lot of people don't believe that you can be successful as a trader, right? They're giving you misinformation. The people that are in trades and they never lose a trade, but they're going to teach you about trading. If a person has never lost on trades, they're not really, I don't know what they can teach you about trading, because part of trading is losing. Some of the biggest traders in the world have lost. So you got to understand is that there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation, and a lot of false information in this game about trading. However, the reason why you come to this particular channel, this particular platform, is you want to actually get something that's going to be what we would call right and exact, and actually based on the truth around what is going on in this particular market, because you're talking to a trader. And other traders understand how other traders communicate. They understand what they're talking about. They may not necessarily agree with their perspective, but traders know other traders, and they kind of understand their perspective on the market. And what I want to try to do is help you if you've lost a lot as a trader, if you can't figure out what to do next, if after you take a lot of losses, you get down on yourself and you start dealing with a lot of self-doubt, I want to try to help you get you to understand that you can get yourself out of that position if you just try to create a process based on what's going to take for you to be successful. And we're going to kind of use Jordan as a parable. So let's go ahead and get into it. When we're looking at Michael Jordan, everybody knows him as, people call him the GOAT, the best player of all time, yada, yada, yada. However, in the late 80s, he went through 6 playoff series. He lost all of them. Now, nobody talks about this. So 6 years in a row, Mike lost in the playoffs, right? And a lot of these losses, they're series where, you're losing, you're getting beat real bad. And a lot of the reasons why he lost because he's playing stacked teams. Like he lost to the Celtics. Those were stacked teams he lost to. Lost to some Detroit teams. Those were stacked teams. I mean, Mike really lost to better teams than them at one time. However, the thing about Jordan was that his goal was to be a champion. That was his goal. His goal, really, people don't understand. His goal really wasn't to score a whole bunch of points, to win a whole bunch of individual stats. His goal the whole time was to be a champ, because he could have stayed a stat guy and just never won anything if that's really what he wanted to do, because he had proved at a certain time I can put the numbers up. I think people really don't understand how good this guy was. If you can go, I think it might have been 88. I think the guy was scoring champ. I think he might have been MVP. And I think he might have been defensive player of the year. Okay. Understand how difficult it is to, as a guard, big man, a little different, right? But as a guard, to be not only the scoring champ, but to also be the defensive player of the year as a guard. That's very, very difficult. And one thing I always told people about Michael Jordan is that most people have no idea, one, because they never played ball, on a competitive, organized level. If you're one to go-to scorer, how much energy you got to expend, right? Then two, you're also playing lockdown defense. And just the amount of energy that takes out of somebody. And then you're doing that for 80-something games. So I just don't think people realize that this guy's intensity was on another level to be able to accomplish that. Because you're scoring champ, and on top of that, you're averaging, you're defensive player of the year. So he could have been cool with those kind of individual accomplishments, but he wanted to be a champ. So he understood that I got to try to figure out how to be a champ. It's more than just me being a scoring champ, right? It's more than just me getting this individual accolade. It's more than just me being MVP of the league. I'm here to be a champ. So what do I got to do to be a champ? So every time he got turned around, he continued to try to work on what can I do to become better. A lot of people credit Phil Jackson in the offense, but the offense don't work if the player doesn't try to figure out how to fit themselves in the offense and make the offense work. Jordan was such a star. Phil Jackson could have brought in that triangle offense, and Phil could have been like, man, I'm not going to play it. Y'all trade me. And they would have had to do something. But he understood is that, let me try this because I believe this may help me get to where I'm trying to go because I want to be a champ. Right? He always had a desire to really be a champ. And you got to understand this, back then in that era, people didn't really jump teams like they do now. So you kind of had to sit on your team and figure it out. And you had to make the sacrifices that it was going to take to figure it out. Okay? So Jordan lost six playoff series in a row before he ever won. Once he was able to figure it out, it was over for everybody else. They three-peated. He retired, played baseball for a little bit, came right back and three-peated. And what you got to understand is that when you're looking at a older Jordan, I don't mean old, I mean a guy in his early 30s, right? But compared to the guy that was 24, 25, 26 years old, he understood how to control the game without just trying to figure out how to score on everybody. Now, he always scored a lot, but it was a difference. A lot of guys can score, but they don't control the game. It's very hard for a guard to do that. It's easier for a big man to do that, the way basketball was set up back then, right? But for a guard to be able to control the game by scoring, right? However, you not just scoring, you controlling the game. It's a difference. And he was able to figure out how to do that. And then once he figured it out, he just did it. And if you kind of watch a lot of his older series, like the Utah series, it was almost like it was a routine. Like he would come up the court, they would run a play, he would score, they would pedal back down the court to get on defense. The game was low-key almost boring because he had just figured out, okay, this is the tempo that we're going to play at till we decide to do something different. This is how we're going to execute the offense. It became very routine because they had done it so many times. They knew how to do it right every time down the court. And that's just an understanding of what you're trying to do and understanding how to execute on offense, right? And then even if the defense tries to stop it, you've seen every variation that they're going to do to try to stop it. It's all about execution at the end of the day. So when you got a veteran team like that, everybody just knows what they got to do to execute. So if they stop what I'm trying to do, I throw the ball to Curry, just knock down the jumper. Or they try to start what I'm doing, and then Pip cuts to the lane, and we give it to Pip. He dunk. Like, it becomes very almost boring to watch because there's not a lot of variety because they've gone through this so many times. They know exactly what they need to do. But he got to that point by understanding, what do I need to do to be successful outside of just trying to score as many points as possible? How can I control and impact the game with what I bring to the table that's going to allow me to become a champ? And what he understood is that what's going to allow me to become a champ may not necessarily be the type of basketball that is very friendly, but it's going to allow me to become a champion, right? And you got to understand the difference between that. When you're an options trader, what's going to allow you to become a successful options trader, it may not be the big home run trades. It may not be the 100% trades. It may not be the 140% trades. It may be the 30% trades. It may be you hitting for 30%, you getting out. You hitting for 30%, you getting out. You hitting 40%, you getting out, because you got to understand, once you start getting position size, once you start getting percentages down, then it just becomes about position size. That's something I try to get everybody to understand as a student. Once you get your percentages down, then it becomes position size, because percentages are still percentages. So 30% of $100 is the same thing as 30% of $1,000, which is the same thing as 30% of $10,000, which is the same thing as 30% of $100,000. So if you was in GameStop and you put in, right, $10,000 and you got back 500%, right? That's the same thing as you being in GameStop for $100,000 and you got back 500%. But you have to be disciplined in those kind of trades to understand once you hit your percentage, it's time to exit. So the lack of discipline existed before you ever got into the trade. And your lack of discipline is the reason why when you get into the trade and you start seeing your percentage start to jump up, you break down and say, well, you know what? Let me sit in it a little bit longer so I can get but you're already up, right? 250%. You normally have wanted to exit at 30%. Let me sit in here a little bit longer because I think this is going to be the big play of plays. It don't work that way. So your breakdown of discipline is something that you already had in you before you ever came into the market. Then you come into the market and you do these things and you don't really understand what is going to allow me to become successful. Well, sticking to the script, being consistent, being disciplined. These have nothing to do with the market. They have everything to do with what's going on inside your head. So you may end up on a losing end of a trade and you may feel discouraged. You may feel like, okay, I'm down on myself. You may feel like, hey, I can't get any kind of consistency. So I'm winning, I'm losing, I'm winning, I'm losing, I'm winning, I'm losing. And you really want to start doing these particular things. And we're going to kind of try to walk you through a basic process that's going to allow you to become a lot more successful as a trader long term, because the goal is really at the end of the year to have your account be positive. It's not to hit for GameStop for $10,000 and over the next 90 days you lose the $10,000. That's not really what we're trying to do here. To put you in the winner circle, to put you in the championship position, a lot of that's going to be based on being consistent. And if you can consistently cut your losses at a small percentage and then make your gains greater than your losses at a certain percentage over the course of a year, you're going to be positive. But there's a discipline involved in that. And sometimes you can't worry about everybody else. There's people that did crazy numbers in the market. People do crazy numbers in the market every day, but you can't let you chasing their success throw you off your game plan. Just like if you a ball player and we tell you, hey man, what we trying to do here is win a championship. But you compete with somebody on the other team to be the scoring champ. So they scoring 30 a game, and based on what we trying to do to try to win a championship, your points have gone down 5 points per game. And then now what you doing is you breaking the offense because you weren't about keeping up with that guy on the other team. Well, let me explain something to you. They not going to win no championship over there. We are. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? But for us to win the championship, we need you to move the ball, stop worrying about scoring so much. So a lot of times you're going to mess up by worrying about what's going over in a situation that don't have nothing to do with you, and you eyeballing that situation. You comparing yourself to that situation, but what does that have to do with your objective? Okay? You really got to understand that. It's a lot of guys in the NBA going to put up big numbers. Only a small amount of those guys, their numbers going to lead to success for their team. But they're going to put up numbers though. But for only a small amount of those guys, are those numbers going to lead to success for their team. The rest of those guys is they just out there just entertaining people, right? Because they're not going to win nothing. They just out there to entertain people. And you got to really understand, what are you here for? And then if you're here to get a certain percentage return, because that's going to lead to a greater overall goal at the end of a particular time period, you can't get caught up in what somebody else is doing, because that don't have nothing to do with you. And that kind of discipline is what's going to allow you to be successful. But let's get to the process. So let's say that you're losing in trades, right? And you getting discouraged, you feeling defeated, you feel like, oh man, I done lost all this money in GameStop. I was up 1,500%, and now I'm down 90% on that trade. First thing you want to do, once you exit all your trades, take your losses, I would encourage you to stop trading. Take 7 days off, take 2 weeks off. Just stop. right? Because you need to get out of the loop for a minute. Because a lot of times you'll chase trades trying to make up for losses. So just stop trading for a minute. Sometimes that can be the best thing for you, just get out of the loop. Second thing you need to do. When you was making a trade, what was going on inside your head? Can you identify it? What story were you telling yourself? What script was you running inside your head when you got ready to make that trade? That's one of the most important things you can do is identify what was going on inside your head. A lot of people are acting unconsciously. They don't even know it. They're going through the motions. They don't even know what they're doing. So sometimes they're not even aware, really consciously aware of what they're doing. Right? So sometimes if you stop and identify what's going on inside my head right now while I'm doing this, because we want to identify what emotions are driving you to engage in this kind of behavior. What are you looking for? What do you think the desired result going to be? What do you think the end result of this particular activity or this action is going to be? Then you need to identify in your mind when the trade went bad and you started to mismanage it. When you decided that, hey, I'm going to exit at 10% loss, and you looked at your trading account and you saw that you was at a 25% loss, what did you tell yourself to make you stay in that trade? What happened? What did you do? Did you ignore it? Did you cut off the computer and say, man, I'm not going to worry about it? Did you say, hey, give it another hour maybe to turn around? Did you say, hey, I really need this money because I'm trying to buy so-and-so some shoes? What did you tell yourself to make you stay in that trade, even though you decided that if you lose 10%, you're going to exit? What did you tell yourself? Because you had to tell yourself something to get you to go against your own word. You had to. So what was that? Then once you identify those two things, you need to sit down and determine what you need to do to change your behavior. Is there some kind of safeguard that you can implement? Do you need to stop trading for an even longer period of time until you really can get your head together? What do you need to do and implement into your life to change your behavior? Do you need to go see a therapist? What do you need to do? Because if you don't get this fixed out, you're not going to be successful in this particular area. So what do you need to do to get yourself together? And are you willing to do that to become successful? Because it's got nothing to do with trading. This has nothing to do with trading. I tell people all the time, this is one of the best environments in the world because it's going to get you to come out. What do I mean by that? Who you really are. The stress of trading is going to bring that out to the forefront. And that's why a lot of people come into this space, and when they really see themselves, they see that reflection, they leave and go do something else where they can hide. Because they hide in a lot of different areas of life. They're able to hide. They're able to hide in relationships. They're able to hide in their job. They're able to get on this social media and really hide and just turn into a whole other person using this level 2 virtual reality that we in right now. This 2.0 virtual reality that we in on social media. They're able to hide. When they get into that market and they got to start making decisions with money, that's not just about buying, but it's about you buying and selling in the marketplace that's very dynamic and it's very fluid and it's designed to manipulate your psychology. These people are running psych ops on you all the time to get you to make decisions that are not necessarily in your best interest. And you go into this environment, who you really are relatively quickly comes out. And a lot of times when people have to deal with who they really are, they realize I can't hide. I got to deal with myself, right? Them not wanting to do that becoming so painful to them, them wanting to protect their opponent so bad is why they say, you know what, this trading don't work. This particular person on the internet told me that was the case, yada, yada, yada. And they go and do something else, which is what? Just engage in more consumer behavior. It's easy to invest. No disrespect to people that teach investing. I'm a long-term guy right now, right? I buy Apple stock probably every month. But you know why it's easy to invest? Because you've already been indoctrinated in buying behavior. You've been buying ever since you was a little kid. You used to go to the corner store and buy some candy. It's easy to buy. Buying stocks are easy. All I got to do is get you to take what you was buying over here and buy this over here. You haven't even really changed your habit. Teaching you how to manage capital, how to make decisions with capital that are not based on you consuming something is something that is very difficult because you haven't really been taught how to do that. So it becomes very challenging to you psychologically. Then you're in a very dynamic space, right? Where you got a lot of factors going against you and who you really are is going to come out because you're going to be very challenged psychologically. And so this is why a lot of people will tell you, well, you know what? Don't even come over to this space because I can't teach you how to be successful. And I don't think the rate of success is going to be high enough, right, to where I want to engage in this. But what I know is that once you become successful in this space, it will lead to success in other areas. The same thing is that if you can make it in sales, that transfers to a lot of different areas of your life because it builds a confidence in you that normally the average person doesn't have. I can tell somebody that killed it in sales because they carry themselves a certain way, right? Because to be really good at sales, you got to deal with a lot of things that the average person don't want to deal with. The first thing is rejection. So if you're able to figure that out, a lot of other stuff is small potatoes to you. Why? Because I've already dealt with myself and how I deal with rejection. I've already dealt with that. The average person is never going to deal with that, especially the average woman. She's never going to deal with that. So the fact that you've already dealt with that, right, and you've dealt with that particular aspect of your personality and your psychology, and you've overcome it to be successful in sales, a lot of other stuff in the world becomes very easy to you. You're able to navigate that a lot easier. That's why I think they should teach sales to children. I think all school kids should learn how to sell. And they shouldn't be selling for their little club or whatever. They should be selling as part of their curriculum, right? That should be part of their school curriculum to learn how to sell, because it's going to get them to deal with who they are. Because a lot of people have issues of self-confidence that have been put into them by other people, which is why they think they can't sell. And then when they get rejected in the sales situation, it confirms they lack of self-confidence. A lot of people have issues in self-confidence and believing in themselves and thinking that they can be successful. And then when they go into the market and they have a downturn in the market, you know what plays back in their head? All the stuff that they believed about them and why they couldn't be successful. That's what plays back to them. So in their mind, them being unsuccessful in the market is a confirmation of their attitude that they could not be successful. That's really what they're worried about. So then what they do is they go to areas of life in which it's easy to confirm, right, that they can be successful. Well, what's one of the easiest ways that you can confirm being successful? Just go buy something. I got $20. It costs $20. I go buy it. Easy to get to success. That's easy. That's why we got a world full of consumers and very few people produce anything. Because we've conditioned people to avoid anything, right, that's going to potentially reject them, and only go to things that are going, right, to accept them. And I don't mean that you should be in places in which they're negative for you or toxic. What I'm saying is that you avoid situations and you're not going to get an immediate confirmation that everything is all right. And so you can go into a trade and that thing can turn against you. And if you start letting what somebody told you when you was a child, or what people told you back in high school, or what people told you in college, or issues in your family, right, that try to convince you that you weren't good enough, that you didn't have what it took, yada, 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 and then you use the market to confirm that again, that's where your problem is at. Got nothing to do with the market. You've been carrying this for your whole life. So that's why I told you, some of you are going to have to seek out professional help. Because I'm not a professional. That's not what I do. And I don't even attempt to act in that particular manner. I'm not a professional mental health therapist. And then once you figure that out, you're going to find yourself more successful in every area of your life, not just the markets. But the markets really will quickly bring to the forefront that that's one of your challenges. And just like Jordan, if Jordan had a confidence issue, right, in the area of basketball, the 6 playoff defeats would have got to him. He'd have been like, man, I'm not going to trip on this, man. I'm just going to, what will allow me to feel very confident and affirm? Well, I can score a lot of points. You know, I don't think people realize, people think Harden's a good scorer. He is a great scorer, especially in this era. Durant is a murderer. I mean, that dude, Durant can get 40 a night if he really wanted to. His game is just on that level. I don't think people really realize what they're looking at when you're looking at that guy. Durant can get 40 a night, right? LeBron could have easily been a 35 a night guy. Mike was right up there with him. I tell people all the time, Mike had one year he averaged 35 points a game. Mike was not a 3-point shooter. He had another year where he averaged 37 points a game. Mike was not a 3-point shooter. Mike was going to the rack almost every time. And the man averaged 37 points a game playing like that, right? Mike added that little pull-up later in his career, right? Added the post-up a little late, not late in his career, but like the middle of his career, added the post-up game. But Mike, early on, he was going to the rack. And he just kept going and kept going. And it doesn't matter what you did to him. He get the ball again, he going right back to the rack again. That's how he played ball. And so you got to understand is that it could have been easy for him just to do that. and say, man, we lost the playoffs. That's cool. I averaged 35 this year. We lost the playoffs. That's cool. I averaged 37 points a game this year. Right? And he could have fell into that lane as I'm just a big time scorer. I'm an elite scorer. Because that would have been confirmation and been easy to get that confirmation and be easy to get that success. When you start talking about you want to play ball at that championship level and you want to swim with them type of sharks like a Larry Bird and you want to swim with them Isaiah Thomas type sharks, right? It's a whole nother mindset that you got to go into because you're dealing with some very serious people, right? And we saw when Jordan came into he came into those arenas and tried to get with those dudes. They put it on him. It wasn't no you just going to come up in here and take something from us. They put it on him because he had to show that he belonged in that particular environment. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? Now, these players now, you don't have to go through that because it's a different league. But back in that era, the NBA was a grown man's league. Wasn't no young people doing nothing. So when you got around them grown men, you know, you low-key got hazed. That's just how it went. But because of his confidence and because he understood 100% what he brought to the table, a lot of that was put into him in college. A lot of that also had to come with how he was raised and how he came up. Even if he lost a playoff series, it wasn't a confirmation that he wasn't good enough. It was just a confirmation of I'm just not in a position to where I can get to what I want to get out of this scenario. But some people, when they lose, to them, that's a confirmation that they are a loser. To other people, when they lose, it just means we lost. And you got to understand the difference between the two mentalities. LeBron the same way. LeBron lost a lot. LeBron got swept by the San Antonio. But you couldn't tell LeBron he was a loser. He just wasn't going to believe that. So let me go down to Miami. Let me figure out how to win. But I'm not a loser because I got swept out of the finals. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? That don't make me a loser. And he's another guy could have been content with just putting up big numbers and not winning nothing. But he wanted to play at that elite level. And he's still there right now at almost 40 years old. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So you got to understand when you're losing as an options trader, because I didn't want to turn this into a sports discussion. When you're losing as an options trader, what do you need to do to mentally get yourself back right? Because this is a mental game. The actual fundamentals that you got to learn, the techniques that you got to learn are relatively easy. You can teach them to a grade schooler. They are. They're not that hard. We're not doing any really complicated math in here. You don't really need to learn Black-Scholes to trade options. You don't need to, right? People will tell you really don't. Basic statistics. But what's going to defeat everybody in this market is a psychological breakdown. It's never that you don't know Black-Scholes well enough. What defeats everybody in this market is psychological breakdown. What defeated those traders that was up 11 million and then went on a run where they lost everything was psychological breakdown. Every time it's psychological breakdown. It's not that they didn't know enough about the market. You don't get to 11 million if you don't know a market. But they broke down psychologically. They gave all that 11 million right back to the market. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So you really got to really focus in on what's going on inside your head at all time. And can you sometimes stop yourself and say, well, what am I thinking right now that's making me make this decision as a trader? What am I thinking right now before I go into the trade? Am I chasing something? Am I feeling like I'm missing out on something? Am I in a state of euphoria? These things can be dangerous to you because you're not level. There's nothing wrong with being happy. There's nothing wrong with that. But you got to be level, right? In certain situations, you can't be too up and you can't be too down, right? You got to be level. A lot of people got caught up into the GameStop hype. They about to take all the air out of that balloon right now. Now what they going to run to? They're going to look for the next hype to run into. Why? Because they gassed off hype. They chase hype. They need that to make it through life. You don't want to be that person. That's going to be hard for you to be consistent in the market if you're chasing euphoric situation to euphoric situation. I had a trader that I was able to work with, became extremely successful. She told me the other day through social media, I don't trade as much. I just think the dopamine rush has run off. And this was a person used to tell me, I just trade. It's like, I don't trade as much. I think the dopamine is worn off. I say, yeah, you get seasoned in this game. You're realizing you're more effective the less you trade. So you're looking for better quality setups so you can become more consistent, right? Because you know you can trade. You've been able to do it. You've been successful at it. So now what you're looking for is better quality setups as opposed to how can I trade as much as possible, right? And that's really what it's about. So Hopefully you got value from this. Hopefully I wasn't a little bit too all over the place. I wanted to try to stay on task, but I wanted to kind of try to use other people's life as a parable to try to get you to understand what I'm talking about. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Hit me up in the comments. This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, and I'll talk to you later.